This was one of the most fun podcast episodes I've recorded yet because Dawn is a really good friend of mine. She's in my peer-led mastermind group, and we really went behind the scenes on this podcast episode talking all about email marketing and funnels. And Dawn Mars is the founder and CEO of Mars Marketing, where she helps entrepreneurs grow and automate their businesses using funnels and Entreport and launching. And we really did dive into some really great nuggets. So without further ado, please welcome Dawn to the show. Hey, Dawn, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, Lori, I'm super excited to see you again. Second time today.
And I just wanted to give a little bit of background. So Dawn and I are in a peer-run mastermind group where we meet every Monday, and she is our resident expert / Entreport funnel person. And so anytime we have a question about our funnels or Entreport, which is our CRM, and we'll talk about Entreport, I'm sure, over the next half an hour or so, we turn to Dawn. So I'm so happy that you're here and you're going to lay the smack down for everybody in terms of funnels and what they need and all that good stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I totally forgot that we were recording as a video. And I'm like, I take notes while I'm talking. So if I look like I'm not looking at Lori, that's why.
Yeah, that's okay. I take notes too, actually. I think we all do because there's so much goodness that we pack into these calls. So let's lay the foundation, because I think the word funnel is a buzzword. I certainly didn't know what a funnel was when I first started. And now they're super popular. So if we can dive right into what a funnel is, and then we can sort of veer off into different directions about who should be using funnels and the different kinds of funnels that work really well in businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we should start off with what exactly a funnel is, right?
Yeah, let's start off with that.
Let's talk about that. So a funnel is essentially where you give people a reason to give you their email address. So whether it's a free PDF download or a free guide or a free video, what you want to do essentially is just get them onto your mailing list, into your CRM. Like Lori mentioned the word CRM, that stands for Customer Relationship Manager. And that's like an online piece of software that handles that for you. So basically you give something of value that people are going to love, that's going to entice them. It's kind of like everybody calls it a lead magnet. It's kind of a hook or like bait, right? To get people to do what you want them to do. They give you their email address, and then you, generally speaking, sell them something. That's kind of how we make money online. If you're not doing that, you're probably pitching out in the social media space, which is very ineffective, and it's kind of abrasive. People don't like it.
So we use Entreport for ours. There's two things I want to touch on. One, CRMs can be anything from like Entreport, Infusionsoft to something like MailChimp, right? Something that basically handles your email management. Is that correct? Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. And then the next thing that I want to just elaborate on, because you said the online space. So what happens to those businesses who are offline? For those, let's say, health practitioners or service providers that use social media to get their name out there, but they predominantly have what we would call an offline business. Is a funnel something that they would also benefit from?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like if you don't have a mailing list, if you don't have a funnel that you're using right now in your business, you are losing money. You're leaving money on the table, and it's crazy. Stop doing that. Okay.
Yeah.
Listen to this episode like 10 times if you have to, because I feel like we're going to like bubble over with good stuff. Lori says like I'm the funnel queen,
Yeah.
but she is also the funnel queen. So don't let her.
Dawn and I can very easily go down into a deep, dark rabbit hole, but we're not going to do that here. But the point that we're trying to make is not to disqualify yourself. So whether you're like a newbie starting your business, or you're a veteran, but you have like an offline clinic, what Dawn was describing is really a way to capture prospects,
Yeah.
right? And maybe just give an example of like the prospect journey through a funnel so that it can become more clear for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are lots of ways that you can do it if you have an offline business. And I think that a really good example, I guess is a kind of a bad example given the climate. I don't know if you guys have heard about massage envy, what's going on down here, but okay, let's not talk about it. It's not that cool. But they do a great job of their email marketing. So when you go into Massage Envy, you give them your name and your email address, and then they're going to send you discounts, or they're going to send you, you know what I mean? They're going to send you deals. They're going to give you, like in their newsletter, there's something juicy to be gained by being on that newsletter. So whether it's like, I think for most offline businesses, the juiciest offer is like something free or something
Mhm.
deeply discounted.
Yeah.
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 Come in for your first
Absolutely.
treatment for free would be a
Yes.
great one.
Yeah. And I know even a couple massage therapists who heavily rely on their email lists to fill the like in between spots. So let's say like 2 p.m. is not, I'm assuming, is not a very popular time to go get a massage. Or to go see your chiropractor, or to even personal train. Like I know you just worked with a personal trainer. Those like dead spots. If you have an email list and they're nurtured through your funnel, you can then send them an email with like a discounted coupon code, let's say, to fill those time slots, which you can really only do if you have an actual email list.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And especially like you think about how much of your time is wasted as a practitioner by no shows or people who
Mm-hmm.
cancel at the last minute. That's a great way. Like if you have built a mailing list, it's a great way to communicate with your customers. And like when we talk about sales funnels too, we talk a lot about email, but that doesn't mean it's the only way that you can communicate, right? Like you can capture an SMS, like a text message number. And that'd be perfect, I think, for an offline business where like you had a no-show and then you text blast the people on your list and say, hey, we've got an opening, last minute, 50% off, come on in and get your massage, whatever. There's all kinds of ways to do it. You can send postcards. Lori, there's a million ways to communicate with people that, and I think people get caught up in this idea that if they're offline, that there's no place for them in the online space, and it's not true.
I completely agree. I think that even if you have, regardless of the business type, whether you're online selling service packages, or you're online doing programs or products, or you're offline also one-to-one service packages or programs, it doesn't matter. The point is, the way that I think of a funnel is it's really just your lead capture, nurture, and sales process. That's the way that I think of it. And so if you're a business that's selling merchandise, regardless, you need a method by which to do that.
Yes. And
And
so
that
I
would be a
think
funnel.
one of the things that I typically will say to people, like if I'm doing webinars on the topic, I'll say, as we're going through this, I don't want you to be like disqualifying yourself. Just listen and say, how can this work for me? How can this fit in my business model? Because it can. I guarantee you, I don't like, it doesn't matter what business. I was gonna say, I don't care what business you're in. I do care. I care about your business, but it will work for you. So yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so now that we have a really solid understanding of what a funnel is, it's basically just a lead capture, nurture, and sales process. And we have an idea of who needs to use one, everybody. Tell me what sort of a base funnel would look like. Like, what are the steps in a funnel that would, I guess, follow like a lead capture?
Okay, so there are a couple of components that you need. I feel funny teaching this to you, Lori, because like Lori's so good at this stuff. She's so good at it. So you need a couple of pages, right? For a typical lead capture, you need a lead capture page, some way to collect email addresses. So it's like, hey, download our free guide, um, how to lose 7 pounds in 9 days. I don't know if that's healthy, but it's catchy, right? So they enter their email address to get the free download. And then on the next page that they're taken to, maybe there's a video of you talking about the program, or maybe you're talking about the PDF, or you deliver the free video. So it's really just a 2-page process. But then on the back end, they might start receiving emails from you. And I would typically say, I know this sounds a little bit overwhelming, but you want to communicate with people out like 6 months. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm way more on that bandwagon lately. I've been working with clients who do have longer follow-up series. And for every week of follow-up that you add, you can add like a 1 to 2% conversion. So we'll
Interesting.
talk about conversions. That's probably a little like, woo, but the longer your sales process, the more emails that you send over time, the better your sales are going to be.
So I know one of the, I don't want to call it a mistake, but it's like one of the things that we're not taught, regardless of whether you're a health practitioner or a graphic designer or whatever, is we're not taught how to nurture prospects. We
Mm-hmm.
know that we need leads. We know that we need to sell, but there's this whole in between period that needs to take place. And we're not taught, well, what emails to send and when to send them and how far apart do you send them and what do you even say? So talk to me about the kinds of content that you would include in this like immediate nurture funnel.
Okay. Well, there's two different ways that you can approach it, right? And Lori, you're so masterful at this stuff. I really, really love the way that you write. And so if you are on Lori's mailing list, if you're not, get on it. And if you are, then you know that it's very conversational. So I personally really like the conversational approach to email marketing, where when I'm writing, I actually have a picture. This is crazy, but I have a picture of my best friend in front of me and I write as if I'm writing her a letter. Okay. And that's like just a little hack that works for me, because then I know if I'm writing the way that I would write to her, it'll be maybe a little bit funny, because I'd be a little bit more funny when I'm with my best friend. And also I'd be a little bit more open and candid. And I'd talk more about how I feel about things versus like just the logic, because people buy based on emotion. Right. They buy based on emotion. So if you can paint a picture and talk to them like they're a friend, you're going to have a lot more buy-in than if you're just like, my program includes this and this and this and this and this. People are going to be like, cool, bye. Right.
Yeah.
Like that's not how it works. So there's two different approaches. You can go with the like selling immediately, like immediately they opt in to get the free thing. And then you're like, hey, you know what? People who download this free thing really love this additional video program that I have to go with it. You can click here for a limited time and get it for $27. And then you can follow up with them for like the next 5 days, offering them the same thing. Like it's kind of like a mini flash sale that happens immediately after opt-in. And like I go back and forth between which approach I like, but the nurture series, where it's just like giving really good content. Like if you have a blog that has a lot of good content, sending them emails, telling stories about your life, telling stories about your clients, giving testimonials and like, case studies. Oh my gosh, warming people up with that stuff. By the time you're ready to sell, when you're doing a flash sale or some kind of promotion, they're so ready to be part of your inner circle because they already feel like they know you. So those are the two approaches I would say. What do you think, Lori?
Yeah, I think so too. And I think if you're going to go with the approach of wanting to like invite them into an offer or sell them something right away, it has to be something pretty non-threatening and pretty low price.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's higher price, higher time commitment, so like a multi-week program, something where they actually have to invest, you need time to be able to educate them and overcome those objections and those false beliefs in order for them to invest the money and the time that is required to actually get the results. So if you're sort of like, I don't know which one to choose, just go based off of that. I think that advice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the conversational approach really works well, especially in the health practitioner space. I think most health practitioners that I know don't want to be thought of as hard selling or pitching. They don't actually like even the word sales. Nothing happens until you sell, by the way, right? Your
Yeah.
client, they can't get a transformation and you can't make a living. So sales really isn't a bad word. But I know that most people don't want to be perceived in the marketplace as being too pitchy. And I think that most clients don't want to feel like they're being sold to. So if you can do it in a really conversational way that makes them feel like you really genuinely care about them, I think way better results.
And so if we're going to go that sort of conversational, longer nurture route, how many emails do you suggest and how many days apart should you be sending them?
Well, that's really subjective. And I think it depends on how you start the relationship. So if you want to be in a position where you can email often, you have to start off that way. You can't like send one email a month and then all of a sudden I'm going to send an email 6 times a week. That's going to really put people off. I think whatever you decide, I would say no less than once a week. Like if you are out of sight, you're out of mind. So at least one email a week, bare minimum. But I would say like set the expectation early in your email series So tell people, this is what you can expect from me. I'm going to send you an email every Wednesday at 8 a.m. that's going to give you some little tip, like the food of the week, or, how to like figure out your macros or something, right?
Yeah.
Just, but letting people know so that they have that expectation. And if you're doing your email marketing right, there will be times when you will screw up and you'll forget to send at Wednesday at 8 a.m. and people will email you looking for that email, right? Because they're waiting for what you have, and they want what you have, and they need what you have. So just know that when you start showing up that way, people are going to like look for you.
Yeah. And I love that piece of advice. And it never sort of occurred to me to sort of share that advice that way. It's like, if you are someone who wants to sell frequently, which I don't see why you wouldn't be, you can't send an email once every 2 weeks. And then during a launch, which I think people make this mistake, they'll start off, once a month, once every 2 weeks, and then they'll go into a launch and they'll slam their list with, 10 emails in 5 days, and everybody gets all freaked out. And so you
Mm-hmm.
have to set the tone from the very beginning, in terms of frequency. That's a really good point. So we have a nurture email. What are some of the key topics in your experience that should be covered in those nurture emails? Those, like, let's say those first 5 emails that a subscriber would get after the lead magnet.
Man, I wish that I had my series pulled up in front of me right now. I could do it. It'd take me a second. But I think that one of the most important things to have in there is let people know why you do what you do. Like if you read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, he
Mm-hmm.
talks about that people don't care what you do, they care why you do it. And to like, most of the people I know in the health space started doing what they do because they were struggling somewhere in their life, like really painful experience, and they figured it out. So if that's you, tell that story. Let people know why you care so much about them getting results. That's going to stick people to you like glue. The other thing that I think is really underutilized is testimonials. Like if you have people in your group who are getting amazing results, send out an email once in a while that's like, hey, big congratulations to Lori, who is killing it with our program. We're like so excited for her success, and we really can't wait for you to be the next one. Like it just like kind of like drip feeding people to let them know that yes, you do have clients, right? It's like social proof. And yes, they're getting good results. And then don't just leave it at that. Like take a screenshot out of your Facebook group and stick it in the email. Like put things that prove that you are legit in your email. Because then people like it's undeniable, right? When you have
Yeah.
undeniable proof, people will buy.
And I think that goes for too, like, even if you're listening, if you're like a graphic designer or whatever kind of like service you provide, people want to know why you do what you do, right? They want to understand where that motivation came from. They want to understand why you feel so passionate about the work that you do. And I think for most of us, we feel confronted when we have to share personal details, and it becomes very hard for us to share those kinds of details because we feel like we're being unprofessional.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've got a really good example of that, Lori. Super good example because I'm not great at transparency, like sharing bits about my life because I'm very introverted and I feel like my private life is my private life, right? But I had been feeling for a long time that I had been way too quiet about my divorce. Like it was really bothering me that I had never told anybody. I just kind of like unfriended my ex-husband on Facebook and changed my last name, and that was it. And nobody really asked any questions, but I know that they wanted to.
Mhm.
And so this Thanksgiving, or well, Canadian Thanksgiving, actually, I wrote a really heartfelt email and just explained what that was like this year and how it changed things and changed my business. And like, I was so terrified. I wrote the email the night before. It was scheduled to go out at 8 a.m. And I was like, I can't do it. I stopped the broadcast and I didn't end up sending it till 4 o'clock at night, like 4 o'clock in the evening when I finally hit send. And I got more responses to that email, I think, than any other email I've ever sent, ever, ever, ever. So I really feel like that personal, like would not believe how many women emailed me back and said, oh my God, I just went through the same thing. I felt so alone. And thank you so much for sharing that story. And so I think when you do that, you open up a whole different level of relationship with people.
Yeah. absolutely. And funny that you should mention that because I had the same anxiety and nervousness and full-fledged body sweats when I sent out my divorce email too. And it was like we had a whole team meeting about it. It was just like this really important piece of content that I had written because it was really personal and it felt really I felt really exposed by it. But I know this to be true. Those times when you craft those pieces of content, when you feel really exposed, that's how people relate better to you. That's how you deepen the relationship with your subscribers, with these strangers that are all over the world. So maybe you didn't go through divorce like Dawn and I, but maybe you had some other type of experience that you've been wanting to share, but you just maybe felt like it was not professional or it was too like TMI. Share it. Share it in a way that you obviously feel comfortable with, that respects everybody's privacy and that holds you still in integrity, but share it nonetheless because it does give you that ability. I mean, like at the end of the day, like it's email, right? And so we only have the use of words or video or whatever it is that we're using. But if we're only sort of giving out recipes and tips and hacks, it's not personal and it gets boring after a while. It's the
Yeah.
personal stuff that like keeps it interesting.
I totally agree. And I think that if you find yourself being too much like recipes and too much XYZ stuff, then maybe check yourself. There's got like what's going on in your life that you could share a little bit about. And I think that, like we're all going through struggles. And I think that that's where it's easiest to connect with people. Like maybe your kids are going through a particularly hard time. Maybe they're being really difficult. Maybe they're having a hard time at school. Maybe they've been sick and you haven't been able to work because you work from home. Like telling those stories, I think really endears you to your audience. The flip side of that, though, I will say, I've seen like people send really, really raw emails where I'm like, oh man, that was way too much information. Like we did not need to hear about those particular details of your period. Yeah, just like way, way too much. So if you need to, like maybe have somebody vet it. Like do
Yes.
you for sure, but it doesn't hurt to have maybe another health practitioner and somebody in your field to just vet it real
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah. I always like the phrase, share from a scar, not from an open wound.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. So if you're like going through it, you don't need to share it as you're going through it, but it's actually I've found too that it's this skill set of being able to share the lessons that you've learned, not the actual thing. Because the actual thing's pretty
Yeah.
private, right? Not like you don't need details. The thing is private, but it's the lessons, it's the aha moments that you've experienced out of the thing, because the thing itself doesn't need to be shared. It's those lessons. But okay, so we have a nurture funnel.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to set this stage, sending emails as you want to continue. So where do people go from there? Like, how do they then move into selling if they're just starting off by like sending some like getting to know you emails?
Well, there's a couple of different series. Like if you think of an email, like think of it as a series, right? So your nurture is a series, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and tell it like a story. When you're writing a 5 email series, I would recommend that you actually put like, if you've got a desktop computer, spread them out over. I wish we were like videotaping and I could spread it out. Videotaping. I'm so old. Anyways, I wish we like spread out little notepads, or like if you use Evernote or whatever you use, or even if you're using note paper, have them all together so that you can see how they intertwine and link. Like there should always be some reference to the next email in the email that they're currently reading so that they know that there's more to the story, right? That'll keep your open rates high because not obviously, I guess, but open rates go down over time. So a person's super hot and bothered for your stuff when they first opt in. They're like, oh my gosh, I need Lori in my life. And then over time they find another guru and then they start opening your emails less and less, right? That happens. So the more that you can say, hey, PS, wait for tomorrow's email because you are not going to believe the story that I'm going to tell you, right? They have to open tomorrow's email when you say it like that. So make sure that you do some of that. Once you've gone through the nurture series, you want to drop them into another series. So it might be like time for a flash sale. So you drop them into a flash sale series where maybe you're going to email them over the course of the next 3 to 5 days where they're going to get a discount. Then at the end of the flash sale, maybe you give them an invitation to a webinar. or you're going to sell them something else. So you just like, you're going to link these series of emails together. And at the end of it, hopefully you've got at least 6 months covered. I know that sounds really overwhelming, but it's not. Like if you can think of email marketing, bare minimum, you want to have one email a week, right? So even 6 weeks of emails is only 6 emails, and you don't have to write them all at once. Write one, get a subscriber, and then just make sure there's another one in there next week so that when Wednesday comes around or Thursday, that they get that email. As long as you're one step ahead of your subscribers, you're fine.
Yeah. And I think for funnels too, it's helpful for me to think about them as like blocks. So, or like pieces of a puzzle, right? Like puzzle pieces. So we have all these different areas of our business, and then you can just like pick and choose which block you want to insert where. And so each one of those things, in my opinion, would be considered a funnel, and with a specific outcome. Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like small funnels inside of your funnel. It's not just one thing. It's part of each funnel is part of a bigger system, which is your business. Like there are funnels inside of your business. Once you get your system set up, we don't really call them funnels, but like back end processes that, like when somebody requests a refund, for example, there's a process for that. You're not just like willy nilly being like, okay, buddy, sending you your refund. No, you're going to send them like a questionnaire that says, hey, why are you requesting the refund? And then based on that answer, maybe you send them an email that says, hey, based on this, I think maybe like, let's have a chat. Or what if we offered you this additional level of service? Would you like to stay? Like there's all kinds of things you can do once a person is in your world that nobody on the outside will ever see, but it's all part of the bigger picture.
Right. And I can feel people who are, maybe new to running a business, regardless of what type of business you're running. And they're like, oh my God, I don't have any of these things. Where do I start? What do I do? And I just want to say to you, like, that's okay. Most of us who are doing this don't have any business background. We like learn it. Like we really don't know what we're doing. We just make it up. But having, the ability to think about your business in terms of these like steps or these policies or these procedures really, really helps. So if somebody wanted to, let's say, go from the nurture to a webinar, walk me through sort of what those emails in that sequence would look like.
Okay, so at the end of the nurture series, like when you're wrapping it up, you'd be like, hey, watch your inbox. I've got a really special gift coming your way, or I've got a special offer that's exclusive to you, right? And maybe you're giving them a coupon code that's only good for them because they're at this certain part in your sales process, right? So the next email would, maybe you time it. I know that Kathleen, who's also in our mastermind group, she always times it from Tuesday. Is it Tuesday to Friday?
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday to Friday. Well, whatever. You figure out what works best for you. Probably during the week is generally speaking better. So you just make sure that the next email comes out on a Tuesday and it's like, hey, it's Tuesday. The cart's open. Here's your discount. Here's 20% off. Happy days, right? And you're going to email them a little harder during a flash sale because you want them to take you up on the discount offer. Most of your sales, by the way, are going to come in at the very end, right, Lori?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. Always.
People love to procrastinate.
Yep.
Yeah. So those emails would just like get them more and more pumped about the product. So you make sure that in those emails that any objection that a person might have, that you're solving that either through telling them directly, like through a Q&A, or you're solving it, or you're dispelling their worries through a case study or testimonials that show that somebody else has overcome that exact thing, but it wasn't a problem for them. And so you just transition that way. And then you kind of go back to normal. You might even I think you sent one, Lori, actually at the end, like, hey, I know it's been a lot of email. Thanks for sticking with me. That was amazing. And you guys are awesome. Here's a special training or whatever.
Yeah.
I was emailing you hard.
Yeah, because I had something to sell and I was hard selling it and I wanted to sell it, but I also recognize that it's not for everybody. And so here's just like a thanks for not unsubscribing while I hard sold my thing. Here's a free training.
I thought that was lovely.
Well, you know what? And I think that comes down to what you said at the beginning. When you write your emails, you think of your best friend. And I always say this too, that like when I write my emails, I think of my subscribers, like I have this fiduciary duty to like protect them. Like when I write as if I'm writing to a friend. It's very conversational in nature. And so, when you bug your friend and you annoy them, like, I'm still going to do it. Go to the movie. Go see this movie. Did you see the movie yet? Have you gone to the movie? Did you watch the movie? Wait, are you going to the movie? And then I'd be like,
what's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you? You didn't go to the movie? When are you going to go to the movie? Can we go to watch the movie? Have you seen the movie yet? And then it's like, oh, and sorry, here's a lollipop. Like, you know what I mean? Something like that, where it's, I'm not going to not do what I need to do to run my business, but I also just want to acknowledge that this is like a moment in time and it's not going to be this way forever.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was a really beautiful finishing touch. And then it was just back to business as usual. People start getting the newsletter, everything starts going, but before too long, there'll be something else will come along.
Absolutely.
It'll happen.
And that's, that's the way businesses go. And I know this to be true of myself too. Like, I still, and maybe you have this, I still feel like, ooh, that's a lot of email. Like, like, I've been really pushing it lately. That's a lot of email. And I get really nervous about sending so many sales emails so close together. But at the end of the day, I'm here to make sure that my people have what they need.
I think that that's the key to the whole thing. Like, email marketing, believe it or not, is a very emotional thing. I know it took me a long, long time to be comfortable hitting the send button on an autoresponder because it was going to thousands of people. And I was like, and in the beginning, it's not thousands, maybe it's tens, and then it's hundreds, and then it's thousands, right? Because it grows. And even when I only had 10 people on my mailing list, I can remember cringing and being like, oh my gosh, what if they hate me? But here's the thing, like, let this make you feel better if you have that same anxiety. It's not like a carbon copy where everybody can reply and be like, oh my God, you're such a loser. That can't happen. You might every now and then get an email that says you're a loser. It's totally okay. That's their thing. That's their problem, not yours. But there's not like a reply all. The most that they can do is respond to you and be a jerk, but nobody else is going to know if other people think you're not good. So don't worry about it.
Yeah. And one of the things that I know I had too was with social media, whereas like you can't really hard sell on social media. Except I have this Facebook group. And so during one of my launches, I was like, you know what? Inevitably after the launch is over, we will get dozens of people being like, I didn't even know this thing existed. I missed the sale. I didn't even realize that you had this thing. And here I am being like, oh my, like hiding, like, oh my God, I'm hard selling. And we're mentioning it so many times. And still there's people that are upset because they didn't know about it and they didn't get in on time.
Yep. Every single time.
Every single time. And so that is just a really good reminder to me to like go balls to the wall when it comes to promoting my stuff.
Yeah. And it just goes back to like, if you really actually do care, I love what you said, a fiduciary duty. That is such the perfect word for that. When you look at what you actually do for your clients, nobody can get any kind of transformation. They can't improve their life. They can't do, nothing happens until they make a decision. And if you don't help them to make that decision to buy from you, then it's not happening for them. So you let them down. You dropped your fiduciary ball, right? And you didn't help those people get over the finish line. You didn't help them even cross the threshold. So if you can't get them to make a decision, nobody gets anywhere. Your business suffers, their life suffers. So get over that feeling that you have. Like it was like, Lori, can I talk about when you were launching the podcast?
Yes.
Okay. Because I didn't know if you were super transparent about that.
Nope, super transparent about it.
Crapping her pants over this podcast for like months, not because she's typically like a nervous person, but because she cared so much. Like this was like, what did you say? Like your love letter.
Yeah.
It was so deeply personal. So it's okay to feel that way. It's totally okay to feel that way. Your podcast is amazing. And look at the transformations that people are getting because you weren't too scared to do it. Sorry, Lori. I thought I had to.
That's okay.
Whoops. I don't know how to do it. This is brand new.
Oh, it's your new iPod.
Yeah.
Your iPad.
This is where I put all my notes.
Amazing.
All my client notes. It's amazing. Anyways, that story that I was just telling about Lori, that was like very deeply personal. She cared so much about the content. She cared so much about the people that were going to like have her in their earbuds, that it was like, it was a thing. It made you nervous. And but you got over it, you got over yourself and you did it.
Yeah.
And here we are.
And I think that goes, that that really happens with like all areas of business, whether it is that you're learning funnels or you're trying to decide how many emails to send. Like, none of it feels comfortable at the
No.
beginning, right? None of it feels comfortable at the beginning. And now recording podcast episodes, I love doing it and I'm so excited to release them. But Dawn's right, like leading up to it, like I wish we could have had like a behind the scenes camera. Like, you should have seen me. It was not something that I'm not accustomed to actually feeling that way. And so it was very out of the norm for me. But I remember back when I had to do my first sales page, and I remember releasing my first sales page. I was like ill, physically sick about it because I felt so exposed and so scared that no one was going to buy and people were going to judge me. And I remember like for days, like just not eating and not just being so out of my skin about it. And then the sales started to come in and I realized, well, that was silly, right? Like that was a little silly. And I think just remembering that every time we learn something, it's something new that we're doing.
Yeah. And look at the people whose lives you change. That's what I always go back to every time I start to feel nervous about, because I still like I don't love sending broadcast emails. There's something about hitting the send button that's still like, I don't know. I think it's because I was planning my boss's retirement party. This was like when I was in corporate 10 years ago, and I was the one planning the whole party, and I CC'd everybody to be like, okay, make sure that you get the gifts to my office and blah blah blah. And I just added like to the team email, and I emailed my boss. Yeah. And I couldn't retract it. I couldn't there was nothing I could do. And I felt like such a jerk. I think I've got residual from that, because every time I hit send on email, I've got this tiny little bit of anxiety that I'm sending it to the wrong people.
I do too, though.
And
I
this
get
is what I do
so
for
nervous.
a living.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's what you do for a living, and you know that what you're doing is good and it's helping people. But it's still a little nerve wracking. That's why I like to pre-write my emails and just set them up to go out at a predetermined time. Like you were talking about, did you say you were like in the bath or you were hanging out? You were just like chilling on a Friday night, waiting for the emails to come. And you're like, because you knew the emails were set up and you're just like, okay, just got to let it go, let it go. And then it fails.
Yeah. That story reminded me of a story. So I had a similar issue. So in your email marketing database, you have different lists, right? Like we all have these different lists of these different segments. And I had a nutrition practice for many, many years. And so I had an email list of thousands of women who were my private clients, who were just like on my list, and it's in Entreport, and it's, it's nutrition list or whatever it was. And this is when I was just starting to figure out Entreport. And I remember writing this broadcast. So a broadcast is like a dated email. It's not part of an autoresponder. It's just like a one-off that you send. And I wrote about how I was bored seeing clients and why I transitioned into business coaching, and how it was actually to promote a product, was like a signature program, like a done for you something. And I wrote that the reason that I transitioned into like signature programs is because it was really hard to repeat over and over and over again, seeing like one-off clients, and it was boring me. And obviously I sent it to my client list, obviously. So every single person that I had ever worked with in the last 7 years, if they were on my email list, they now felt like I was bored working with them. And I hit send, and I immediately, like within 2 minutes, realized what I did. And so there's some lag time. The lag time had expired, and I had to know that, 3,500 people were about to get this email. And so obviously I sent out an apology email, and I was like, this wasn't meant for you. And I didn't mean that you bored me. I had to like over explain and apologize. That I think is my worst blunder that has ever happened with like email marketing. And ever since then, I feel that I triple check. I'm like, is this going to the right list? Because inevitably you're going to make that kind of mistake for sure.
Oh, yeah. And it's going to give you PTSD. I promise you it will. Because this is like, mine was like 10 years ago. Seriously, it's been a long time since I worked in corporate environment.
Mine was probably about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
going
I
to happen.
still think about that every time I hit send. Am I
Yeah.
sending it to the right list? I've actually extracted those people from my database, so I can't even make that mistake anymore. They're like in a spreadsheet somewhere just in case I ever want to email them again. But I still am like triple check, make sure I'm sending to the right people. And the point of us sharing these stories is because you're going to have a story like that too, and you're going to think that you're an idiot or a failure or whatever. And let me tell you, like, you're not. It's just part of running a business where you're learning as you go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to happen. I think that the main takeaway, I don't know if we're towards the end of our time, I have no idea, but the main takeaway is that email marketing works for every business. So no matter what you're doing, think about how this can work for you, because I believe me, it can. And second of all, if you don't have it going, like, you have to get it going. It has to be a priority. Like, if you're coming to the end of the year and doing your 2018 business planning, this is the time to be like, okay, how am I going to rock it with email marketing? I'm telling you, like, if you don't have it going right now and you implement it properly next year, you'll 10x your business. I
Mm-hmm.
can almost guarantee that. I mean, don't write me and sue me.
You're gonna get hate mail.
I don't want any hate mail about this, but I mean, email marketing done properly is an incredible thing. It's so wildly profitable. I think, what did they say? It's like 44 for every dollar spent on email marketing, it's a $44 return.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, I think email marketing too is like that sort of that secret that everybody's like, tell me the secret of how to make money online. I'm like, send emails. Send emails to really good offers. Send emails often. Send emails as if you're writing to a friend. And then you'll put something on sale and people will buy it. Be consistent, show up, send emails.
Yeah. And the last point is, if you're not on Lori's mailing list, get on it, because she is a really good writer, really, really good example of somebody to follow and kind of emulate. Never copy somebody else's emails. Let me just put it out there. Like, we talk about swipe copy in the industry, like, save emails of people whose writing you admire and whose communication style you admire, but never cut and paste. It'll never come off right. My worst failures in email marketing were times that I was like, I'm going to do this exactly like Frank Kern,
Right.
or I'm going to do this exactly like Ryan Dice, a digital marketer. If you talk like Ryan Dice, a digital marketer, you're going to sound like a dude, which I'm not. You're going to sound pushy, which I'm not. And no, I love Ryan Dice. I'm not saying that he's not great, but that style, I have a much softer persona. Lori has a
Mhm.
much softer persona. And so just don't copy and paste. It's the wrong way to go.
Yeah, and I'll just say swipe files. So I'll just define what those are for people. So swipe files are literally files on your computer where you're taking screenshots or you're saving things or you're putting links to sales pages so that you can draw inspiration from, so that you can draw ideas from. So I have in my Dropbox, I have a swipe file of graphics like memes or sales pages or even like headshots of people that I use as examples. Then I also have a swipe file in my email. So, like the email newsletters that I find, the sales ones that I really like, that I felt like they did a really good job, or even just ones that I want to save because I got a really good idea from them. So, you can save things that you like to draw inspiration from for later, because nobody ever starts with a blank page. Everybody draws inspiration from everybody else. And like maybe the first writer of all time, like back in the day, who like just created marketing, maybe they started with a blank page, but ever since, nobody started with a blank page.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I don't ever. I've got, like, I actually have a Lori swipe file. I don't know if you knew that.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, like we all have swipe files because it like it just is. Nobody starts with a blank page, and there's no reason to reinvent the wheel, right? And so ideas are out there, and the goal is just for you to draw inspiration and make them your own. That's the objective.
Actually, Lori, I just thought of this. So I can't give you a link, but I have an email marketing checklist. So I'm going to give that to you to put in your show notes.
Okay. We'll link
We'll
to
just
it
link
in the
it
show notes.
on your blog, but it'll make things easier. It just tells you kind of what to put in the first couple of emails.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay. So the show notes, we'll definitely link that up. It's LoriKennedyInc.com/podcast. And where can people go to find out about you and what you do?
People can find me at marsmarketing.com. Mars is spelled MARRS. So marsmarketing.com.
Amazing. Thanks, Dawn. This was
Thanks,
fun.
Lori. Yeah, this is so much fun.
Yeah, amazing. So thanks everybody for listening. And again, we'll link up that email marketing checklist, and all of the resources mentioned in today's episode can be found at LoriKennedyInc.com/podcast. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk again real soon. Bye. I do hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of the Business of Becoming podcast. As always, you can find any resources and links mentioned on the show over on the show notes available on LoriKennedyInc.com/podcast. And remember to subscribe and leave a review in iTunes. Let me know what you loved most about this episode. And again, thank you for listening to the Business of Becoming podcast.